I live in Singapore, a place renowned for many things, including our remarkably low crime rates. As a 28-year-old woman, I can usually walk home safely even at 2 a.m. without a second thought. But as we all know, low crime doesn't mean no crime. Despite my age, I've often been chided for being far from streetwise and a tad too trusting. A few months ago, my friendliness came back to bite me. After finishing a closing shift, I decided to grab supper before heading home. Instead of my usual route, I took what I thought was a shortcut. Normally, I'd walk past a few blocks of flats, a construction site, and cut through another block, which added layers of safety, not to mention it's well lit. But the path I chose that night, it was anything but. I wasn't scared, though. I had my music playing, earphones in, as I made my way home. Then, I crossed paths with a construction worker from the nearby site. He looked young-tanned, wearing a checkered shirt with a dark blue cloth wrapped around his waist. A bit of context here. Foreign workers in our country are often met with a mix of warmth and disdain. Many work tirelessly to send money back to their families, or to build a better life for themselves. But some, unfortunately, have a reputation for causing trouble or even harassing women. That night, I had the misfortune of meeting one of the latter. Out of politeness, I nodded and said, "Good night," before continuing on my way. During a lull in my music, though, I got this uneasy feeling, like someone was watching me. I glanced back, and there he was standing just half a meter away, smiling. I yanked out my earphones and picked up my pace, not quite running yet. At first, I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. But when I turned at a bend, my heart started pounding like a drum gone wild. He was still there, slowly walking in my direction, that same smile plastered on his face. It was clear he was following me. I kept my eyes on the path ahead, which, thankfully, led to an open field. In the distance, I saw a brightly lit basketball court buzzing with people. Having read stories about situations like this, I knew I needed to get their attention. Surely, he wouldn't be bold enough to try anything with so many witnesses around. I called out to a few of the players, asking, "Hey, has Dad come down yet?" hoping to sound casual. Just then, two women jogged by with their dogs, and I waved at them, trying to blend in as I jogged alongside. I stole another glance back. He was still there, half a meter away again, smiling, staring. My stomach churned. When the women paused for a break, I petted their dogs and made small talk, then leaned in and whispered to one of them, "Miss, please don't look, but that man behind me, he's been following me for a while. Could you walk with me to the gate up ahead?" Beyond that gate was a two-story house, and behind it, the path to my flat. I wasn't aiming for an Oscar, but I prayed he'd buy my act. I didn't want him knowing where I lived. Thankfully, the woman nodded and played along. We walked together to the gate, and I thanked them before heading toward the house. Once I rounded the next corner, I broke into a sprint, dashing down the path, into my building's foyer, and straight to the lift. I jammed the button for my floor, keys already clutched in my hand. When I got to my flat, I locked the door and peeked out from behind my curtains, half expecting to see him below. Mercifully, he wasn't there. Even so, I kept checking my bedroom window for an hour, trembling the whole time. Later, I spilled the whole ordeal to my best friend. To my shock, she told me I wasn't alone. Apparently, for other friends of hers who lived near my estate had also been stalked by a construction worker. Whether it was the same guy, no one could say for sure. It took me hours to calm down before I mustered the courage to call the police. The woman on the line was initially stern, scolding me for not reporting it right away, but she softened as she took my statement. Gently yet firmly, she advised me not to be overly friendly and to avoid that path from now on. On a brighter note, she assured me they'd send a squad to patrol the area regularly. I can only hope that creep gets caught, and the next time he tries anything, it's an undercover cop who takes him down for good. I haven't taken that path since, not even during the day. I grew up in a family deeply tied to law enforcement. Both my mom and my stepdad worked as prosecutors at our local district attorney's office. My stepdad, who I'll call Gus for this story, is still there, though my mom switched jobs a couple of years ago. This incident happened about 8 months ago and involves Gus. It might surprise most people to learn that, Generally speaking, defendants in criminal cases tend to despise their defense attorneys more than the prosecutors. I'm not sure if it's because they have closer interactions with them or something else, but 9 times out of 10, that's how it goes. Victims, on the other hand, often take issue with the prosecutor. That was the case with a woman I'll call Jessica for the sake of anonymity. Jessica was what you might call a frequent flyer in the criminal justice system. She had a string of prostitution charges, drug offenses, and even a couple of restraining orders against her for stalking. By the time this story begins, she was already well acquainted with Gus, having been prosecuted by him for several charges. True to what I mentioned earlier, she didn't seem to hold those cases against him personally. This time, though, Jessica came to the DA's office as a victim. She claimed her ex-boyfriend had been sending her threatening anonymous messages on social media, and she wanted him arrested for harassment immediately. She laid it all out to Gus, who calmly explained that, given her history of being less than truthful with the court, her case might not hold up well. Still, he assured her he'd conduct an investigation, though arresting someone right away wasn't possible without more evidence, especially since the perpetrator was technically unknown. That was standard procedure. Jessica, however, wasn't having it. She demanded that Gus send an officer to arrest her ex on the spot. When he reiterated that it wasn't feasible, she lost it. I'm a bit fuzzy on the exact details, but from what I recall, she caused a massive scene, kicking, screaming, and throwing a full-blown tantrum right there in the office. Eventually, security had to step in and escort her out. Fast forward a week. At the time, my mom and I were staying in a city about an hour away from our hometown due to some medical issues I was dealing with. I'd rather not get into that. One day, we got a phone call. My cell phone still uses the same number as our old home landline, so I often get calls meant for my mom, usually business-related. This call was for her, but it was unusual. A police officer was on the line. I handed the phone to her and went back to playing on the computer. It wasn't until I heard my mom's voice, sounding frantic and upset as she tried to reach Gus, that I started to worry. I asked her what was wrong over and over, but she wouldn't answer at first, too focused on dialing. That only made me more anxious. Finally, she told me what was going on. It turned out Jessica had some serious mental health issues, likely anger problems, though there could have been more. She'd been texting her therapist for a while, sending death threats aimed at Gus, describing in chilling detail how she planned to kill him. That was bad enough, but it got downright terrifying when we learned Jessica lived just around the corner from Gus and knew exactly where his house was. My mom said Jessica had sent her therapist a photo of herself standing outside Gus's house, holding a gun. She wasn't bluffing. Thankfully, the therapist acted quickly, passing the information to the police. They dispatched several officers to Gus's house, and Jessica was taken into custody. She ended up in a mental health unit at the local hospital for about a week until she was deemed stable enough for release. That was the scariest incident by far, and I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Jessica's creepy, stalker-like obsession didn't stop. For a while, she shifted her attention, even targeting one of the police officers involved. But she always seems to circle back to Gus. Recently, after being arrested for an unrelated crime, one Gus didn't even know about until it happened, she started sending him death threats again. Luckily, nothing as extreme as the gun incident has happened since, but I'm always a bit on edge when I visit his house, especially knowing she knows where he lives. It just goes to show there are some truly frightening and unreasonable people out there. When I was 13, in the 8th grade, I was a volleyball player. I'll be honest, I wasn't exactly a star. I could serve decently and had okay ball control, but setting the volleyball, that was a disaster. Anyway, that's not the point. Our team was small, just 7 players, so it was easy to get to know everyone. Their names, interests, playing styles, friend groups, all of it. This was also around the time I started dating my boyfriend, Alex. He'd come to my games back in 7th grade, so I knew he'd be there cheering me on this year too. The first game of the season came and went pretty fast. We got crushed, but I didn't mind too much because Alex was there to lift my spirits while the rest of the team sulked over their mistakes. During the second game, though, something odd happened. The first time I went to serve, a man a few feet behind me cheered loudly. I was thrilled. Nobody had ever cheered for me like that before, so it felt kind of nice. Across the gym, Alex shot me a goofy grin and chuckled. I smiled back and kept serving. A few more games passed, and this man kept cheering me on every time I served, bumped, or spiked the ball. It got a little embarrassing after a while, especially since I didn't even know who he was. I figured he might be Alex's dad or something. I'd never met his dad before, so it made sense that I wouldn't recognize him. Alex was always going on about how his dad thought I was this amazing girl, how he couldn't wait to meet the one who was the only light in his son's dark, lonely world. We finally won our fourth game, the first victory of the season, and the whole team was over the moon. I was in such a great mood that I decided to introduce myself to who I thought was Alex's dad. It was a short, simple conversation. I walked over and confirmed he was indeed Mark, Alex's father, just as I'd guessed. He told me how pleased he was to meet me, how great I was at volleyball. "You should be on a higher team," he said. "I really hope you try out next year. You got a shot at varsity." I thanked him and left, thrilled to know Mark approved of me. After the next game, I noticed something strange. Alex didn't leave with Mark. His mom was out of state, so that wasn't an option, and Alex had said both his parents were his biological ones, so why wouldn't he go home with his dad? We planned to hang out later that day too. So he wouldn't have gone off with friends. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started watching Mark after each game. He was always there, cheering me on, even when Alex wasn't. Every time he left, he'd climb into a white Suburban with two kids in the back seat. They looked familiar, but I couldn't place where I'd seen them before. Eventually, Alex stopped coming to my games because of football practice, but Mark was still there, always in the same spot, shouting my name across the gym. I asked my mom if she knew any other Mark besides my dad. She said no. I told her about him cheering at my games, and she brushed it off, saying I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just bored waiting for Alex in his car and came to watch me play. I'll admit, I'm a pretty paranoid person, but something about this didn't add up. Then Mark started showing up to my practices, even on days when Alex didn't have football. He was always there, watching. I stopped talking to him, thinking it was best to keep my distance from whatever weird vibe he was giving off. He didn't try to engage either, he just stared. You can imagine my relief when volleyball season ended. No more seeing Mark's creepy face, and I could live panic-free for the rest of the year, or so I thought. Alex kept inviting me to his house, but I was too uneasy to go. I just told him my parents wouldn't let me. About a week after my last game, I was walking out of school when I spotted a familiar car in the lot, a white Suburban. It was Mark's. He waved me over frantically. It was raining, so I jogged closer, but stopped a couple of yards from his car. He rolled down the window and told me to get in, saying he'd drive me home. I politely declined and started walking away. Those two kids in the back seat still nagged my memory. I knew them from somewhere. Every day after that, Mark was parked outside my school, leaning against the hood of his car. He didn't say anything or gesture toward me. He just watched. I'd had enough. One day, in front of Alex, I said, "So, I met Mark after one of my games a few weeks ago." Alex looked confused and asked who Mark was. "Isn't it your dad's name?" I said, pointing at him. "He's standing right over there." Alex's face went pale, and he grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the school doors. I asked what was wrong, but he wouldn't say anything until we were inside. He kept staring at Mark. "My dad's name isn't Mark," he finally said, "and he's out of state right now." I didn't know what to say. If this guy wasn't Alex's dad, then who the hell was he? Alex stayed with me until my mom's car pulled up. As we left, I saw Mark get into his Suburban at the same time, but I was relieved when he turned a different way than us. For about a week, he kept parking outside my school, leaning against his car, watching me. I wanted to call him out for basically stalking me, but my anxiety held me back. After that week, he vanished for a couple of days, but I had a sinking feeling it wasn't over. Then I started getting messages from a restricted number. I didn't want to look, but curiosity won out. The first photo was of me in class, working. The second showed me hugging Alex, with a few friends nearby. What freaked me out was that I was the only one in those photos whose eyes weren't scratched out. I wanted to show my parents, but they'd never believe me growing up. Whenever something bad happened, they'd say I was just seeking attention. So I deleted the pictures. Later that night, I got a call from a restricted number. Thinking it was a friend playing a prank, I answered. It was Mark's voice, but he called himself Uncle Larry, saying he had a birthday present for me if I'd meet him. I snapped, "I don't care who you are. Just leave me alone." He sighed and hung up. 5 minutes later, I got another picture message. It showed me changing in my room, as if he'd been perched in a tree outside my window. I ran to the window and peered out. Through the branches, I saw a white Suburban parked in front of my house. The next time he called, I answered yelling, "Whoever you are, just go away, or I'll get my parents to deal with you." From his car, he looked up at my window and said, "Silly girl, I know you're home alone. Come out here and let Uncle Larry give you your birthday present before I have to come in myself. I know your special day's on Friday." I hung up, then raced to lock every door and window I could find. I hid in my closet, crying for I don't know how long. After that, I never heard from him again. But a year or two ago, I learned he'd been arrested. Apparently, those 2 kids in his back seat had been missing for nearly a decade. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd gotten into his car that day. Would I have ended up in Amber Alerts across the country, like those kids? Maybe it's better, I don't know. Maybe it's better I just move on. He's gone now, and I'll never have to see his face again. I've kept my blinds closed ever since. It all began when I was 7. My mom and dad had been separated for a while, and my mom decided to introduce me to her new boyfriend, who I'll call Brian. At first, he seemed like a lot of fun. For about a year and a half, things were fine, but then things took a dark turn. He started abusing me in various ways. He called it special time and told me I wasn't allowed to tell anyone. I was so young, I didn't realize it was wrong. He didn't hurt me at first, so I didn't think much of it. As I got older, though, things got worse. By the time I turned 11, I knew special time wasn't special at all. I started to understand how wrong it was, and I wanted to tell someone. I think he sensed it. One day, as I was working up the courage to talk to my mom, he pulled me aside and showed me a revolver. He opened it to reveal the bullets inside and said, "If you tell anyone, I'll make sure every one of these goes in your head." Got it. I was terrified, frozen. All I could do was nod. After that, I kept quiet, too scared to say a word. About a month later, the police raided our house and arrested Brian. My mom told me to go to my room and stay quiet. After a while, a female officer came in. She was kind, chatting with me about my toys before gently asking about Brian. I could tell what she was getting at, and eventually, I broke down, sobbing as I spilled everything. She wrote it all down, then took me to the living room, where she said to a man in a suit, "This one was affected too." The room went silent. The police searched the house and left soon after. The next day, my mom took me to the police station. We sat in a room with at least 20 other kids. My mom cried silently the whole time. I tried to comfort her with hugs, but she seemed too numb to notice. After a while, I was called into another room, and my mom wasn't allowed to come with me. It had 2 couches, teddy bears, and toys scattered around. I picked up my favorite toy and sat down, answering questions from 3 different adults. When it was over, I went back to my mom, and we just went home. It turned out Brian had molested over 30 children, using his role as my mom's boyfriend and my new dad as a cover. He targeted kids at parties while babysitting, even breaking into some of their bedrooms at night until someone finally spoke up. My mom told me he'd be in prison until I was 25. Just 14 years for over 30 kids felt like a slap in the face, but at least he was behind bars. When I was 16, my mom passed away from cancer. Not many people came to her funeral, just what was left of our family. I'd already done a lot of grieving, so I was kind of numb to the tears by then. But one thing I couldn't shake was the feeling that someone was watching me, like their eyes were glued to me. I tried to dismiss it as grief, but it wouldn't go away. During my aunt's speech, I glanced around, and there he was, Brian. He was smiling, a smile that was just too big, too wrong. I grabbed my grandma's arm and shook it hard. She looked where I was looking and saw him too. "There's nothing we can do right now," she whispered, turning back to the funeral. But I couldn't tear my eyes away. That smile, it held me in place, and not in a good way. After my mom was buried, everyone started to leave. My uncle had to pull me away because I didn't want to leave her there with him watching. I didn't know why I felt so uneasy, but I'd soon find out I was right to be scared. That night, there was a knock at my grandma's door. She checked the peephole and screamed, scrambling for the phone. "What is it?" I asked, but she wouldn't answer. So I looked through the peephole myself. It was Brian, still smiling that awful smile. But what made my blood run cold was what he was holding. It was my mom. I collapsed, hysterical, screaming and crying all at once. The police arrived in less than 10 minutes, but by then, Brian and my mom were gone. The cops explained that he'd been released early for good behavior. They never found him, or whatever he'd done with my mom's body. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it wasn't. For the past 3 years, I've gotten letters from him. They talk about how nice my mom is and promise that the next bullets are coming for me. I've seen him too, watching me as I walk home, hiding behind trees, riding a bike past my house, even standing on my front lawn. I've called the police every time, but they never get there fast enough to catch him. Just before I decided to share this story, I saw him again, standing on my lawn, staring up at my window with that same damn smile. I really hope they catch him soon. I'm no stranger to strange encounters. Sometimes they're steeped in raw, bone-chilling terror. Other times, they're just minor annoyances that leave you scratching your head. I walked down hallways, heading somewhere, only to freeze mid-step because stepping into a room felt like stepping into my own grave. I've woken up with long, thin scratches across my face, marks I couldn't have made myself. But if there's one place where the weirdest things have happened, it's wherever my cousins were living at the time. This particular incident took place during a weekend visit to my cousin's place. My siblings and I were staying over, and one night there was a blackout. My aunt had just popped out to grab some groceries, leaving us kids alone. For the first few minutes after she left, we were having a blast, running around, laughing, just being kids. But about 10 minutes later, the entire apartment complex plunged into darkness. It was the second blackout that weekend, so it wasn't exactly a shock. We were used to this kind of thing and knew the drill. We grabbed a couple of battery-powered lanterns and split them between two groups. One group stayed in the living room, and the other hung out in my aunt's room. It was a solid enough setup to get us through the outage. I, however, was exhausted from all the chaos earlier in the day. After about half an hour of sitting around, I decided to call it a night and head to bed. I chose my cousin's room, which was tucked away in the farthest corner of the apartment. To get there, you had to walk down a long, winding hallway that curved and twisted, almost like it was designed to hide the room in its own little pocket, separated from the rest of the place. Now, I should mention that back then, I was terrified of the dark, absolutely petrified. But I was also stubborn and didn't want to look like a scared little kid in front of everyone else. So even though I desperately wanted to take one of the lanterns with me, I left them behind and went to the room empty-handed. In my cousin's room, the bed was reserved for him, so I settled on the floor. I lay down facing the wall with my back to the open door. My eyelids grew heavy and a wave of sleepiness washed over me. I was just starting to drift off when, out of the darkness, I heard the bed behind me creak. It wasn't a quick sound. It was slow, deliberate, like someone was easing themselves onto the mattress, trying not to make a noise. The creak dragged on, heavy and dreadful, as if the bed was groaning under real weight. My heart skipped a beat. Let me be clear, I was the only one in that room. I wasn't so out of it that I'd miss someone walking in. I'd have heard footsteps or felt their presence. But there was nothing, just me in that sound. My eyes snapped open. I gripped the carpet beneath me, my fingers digging in as I forced myself to stay alert. Something was on that bed, and I didn't know what. But I refused to look. I kept my gaze locked on the wall in front of me, straining to listen. After a moment, the creaking stopped, like whatever it was had settled into place. Then it started again, springs groaning as the weight lifted, then pressed down once more. Up and down, up and down, up and down. It was a sickening rhythm, like something was carefully shifting its weight, easing off the mattress only to sink back onto it again and again. The sound filled the room, steady and relentless. I didn't move. My body curled into a tight ball, hands still clutching the carpet. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and a cold dread settled in my chest. I wanted to be anywhere but there, alone in the dark with that noise. But I didn't dare turn around. I had this gut-wrenching feeling that looking at the bed would be a mistake, a big one. So I stayed frozen, eyes glued to the wall, trying to block out the sound. Minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. My mind started playing tricks on me. What would happen if I tried to leave? What was making that noise? What did it look like? Why hadn't anyone come to check on me? I started feeling angry at my family for leaving me alone, for laughing and playing games in the other rooms while I was stuck here, terrified. In my head, I imagined confronting them, yelling at them for not caring. The fear and anger mixed together, swirling into something else entirely. Resolve? The creaking didn't stop, but my mind went blank. I couldn't think anymore. It was like my fear had burned itself out, leaving nothing behind. Without even realizing it, I sat up. Then I stood still, facing the wall. I listened one last time, just to be sure the noise was still there. It was. But there was something else too, something faint, buried in the darkness. I could have sworn I heard my name, whispered in a low, raspy voice, like it was part of a jumbled mess of breaths. I didn't wait to find out if I was imagining it. I turned on my heel and walked out of the room, steady and calm, into the pitch-black hallway. I don't know how I wasn't shaking. The hallway was so dark I could barely see my own hands, but my mind was empty, like I'd switched off my fear. I made my way back to my aunt's room, where the rest of my family was gathered around the lanterns. The moment I stepped into the light, it was like I snapped back to myself. The dull, blank feeling vanished, replaced by a jittery, paranoid version of me. I looked around. Everyone was there. No one had left to go to my cousin's room. They were all accounted for. I decided right then that I wasn't going back to that room for the rest of the night. It's been over 7 years since that happened, but it still feels as vivid as if it were yesterday. That night was the clearest, most intense experience of my life, and the most terrifying. I still don't know what was in that room with me. All I know is I never want to feel that kind of fear again. Before I dive into this story, let me be upfront. I'm not here to convince you it's 100% real or that you have to believe me. These things happened to me over the years, and they've never been fully explained. Take it as you will, believe what feels right to you. My story starts in the early 2000s. I was 12 years old, a boy living with my single, unemployed mother in a big city in the Netherlands. I won't name the place to protect my privacy. We lived in a large apartment complex, the kind with an underground tunnel system for storage. My family always warned me not to go poking around down there. It was easy to get lost. Life wasn't easy. My mom was abusive, and growing up without a dad, with a mother who didn't have her act together, made my childhood rough. But that's not what this story is about. We originally came from Russia, a place steeped in folklore and wild stories. My mom was deep into the occult, calling it magic. She'd mess around with Ouija boards, talk to spirits, predict the future, all that strange stuff. I was never into it. I didn't believe in any of it and had zero interest. As time went on, I saw a revolving door of my mom's boyfriends come and go. When she first got into the occult, things seemed normal enough, or as normal as they could be in our situation. But as I got older, I started noticing things that others in our circle either brushed off or flat out didn't believe. I'm a skeptic by nature, so when I heard voices in the house or saw shadows flicker, I'd tell myself it was nothing. Still, some things were harder to dismiss, like doors slamming right in front of me, or the TV flipping channels on its own, faster and faster, like it was possessed. Some incidents really got under my skin. I had a cat named Mosca, my little buddy. One day, she ran away. People claimed they saw her in the tunnels under the building, but when we found her, her body was mangled, not like an animal had gotten to her, but like someone had taken a knife to her. I was devastated, grieving for my pet. A few days later, we started hearing cat noises all over the house, meows echoing at random times, day and night. I wasn't the only one who heard them. My grandmother, who was visiting, woke me up one morning saying she heard Mosca meowing in the bathroom. I told her it couldn't be, but she insisted. Our apartment was laid out so the hallway led to a toilet on the right, then the bathroom, and beyond that, a kitchen. If you kept going straight, you hit the living room, which doubled as a bedroom since we were broke. The meowing was loud enough to carry through 2 closed doors, but when my grandmother went to check, the noises stopped dead. Silence. A couple of years later, we moved from Russia to another city in the Netherlands. It was 2000, and things took a darker turn. I'd always had nightmares growing up, vivid ones that sometimes left me screaming or crying when I woke up. But now they got worse. My mom's abuse ramped up as she dove deeper into her cult practices, stuff like worshiping the devil or trying to contact dead relatives. She was always open with me about who she was dating, probably because she cared about me in her own messed up way. Then, out of nowhere, this telemarketer started calling our house from a blocked number. He was friendly, chatty, selling something weird like an erotic hotline. I don't remember the details exactly. He'd ask me personal questions, like if I'd ever called one of those hotlines. I was a naive teenager, so I didn't think much of answering him. These calls kept coming, and I got used to them. The guy was persistent, though. One day, my mom overheard me talking to him, grabbed the phone, and chewed him out for being a creep to a kid. After that, he stopped calling, or so I thought. Around this time, my nightmares turned terrifying. I was dreaming about demonic things, creatures trying to hurt me, stuff I'd never seen in movies or books. I wasn't into horror, so it made no sense. I started seeing a counselor who sent me to a shrink. The shrink said I was fine, no schizophrenia, no paranoia, just stress from school. I wished that was the end of it, but things got scarier. Every night, I started hearing noises in the living room. Our new place had an open layout. A hallway led to a staircase, with a living room on the left, my mom's bedroom straight ahead, and mine to the right. The noises came from her room, rustling, like someone was moving things around or tearing paper. Night after night, they got louder and closer to my door. There was a closet outside my room, and the wooden floors were so creaky you could hear the closet doors rattle when anyone walked by. The noises crept nearer each night until I'd wake up like clockwork at 3 a.m. to knocking on my door. The first time I said, "Come in," but nothing happened. The knocking kept going. My mom wasn't the type to knock, she'd just barge in, so I knew it wasn't her. It went on for minutes, steady, like someone was trying to mess with me. It worked. I was terrified. I started barricading my door with furniture, too scared to open it, especially knowing what my mom was into. I confronted her one morning, asking why she knocked so late and didn't answer. She got mad, saying, "How dare you think I'd scare you? I love you. Stop this childish nonsense, or I'll get really angry." That shook me. My mom wasn't perfect, but she wasn't a liar. I tried to chalk it up to neighbors or outside noise, but the knocking came back every night, louder each time. I could tell it was right at my door, not from anywhere else. Sleep became impossible. We lived alone. What was causing it? Then it, or whoever was behind it, started targeting my friends and my girlfriend. First, I got calls from a blocked number on our landline, always at night when I was home alone. I'm not a coward, so I figured it was just pranks. I'd pick up and say, "Hello." All I'd hear was a man breathing. I'd ask again, "Who are you looking for?" And they'd hang up. It happened again, and this time I heard something like wind blowing through leaves, then silence, then a click. My mom didn't have many friends, so who knew when she left me alone? After a few months, I got suspicious. Someone had to be watching me. My mom started getting the same calls on her cell. She complained to the phone company, but they just told her to change her number. We did, but the calls kept coming. I told a couple of friends about it, and they'd stay over to keep my mind off things when I was alone. But then they started getting calls too. One night, fed up, I grabbed the phone during one of those silent calls and yelled, "You're a coward. I'm not scared of you. Come face me if you dare." Silence. This time I hung up. My friends who got dragged into this by trying to help me might have been watched too. Even my long-distance girlfriend, who didn't know about any of this, started getting calls. I was losing it, thinking I was going crazy. One day I was showering and came back to my room to see my phone light up with a call from my girlfriend. I answered and she said, "Great timing." I was confused. She explained, "I spoke to your mom. She was nice and told me exactly when to call to catch you after your shower." My jaw dropped. I never told my mom about my girlfriend, let alone let them talk. We weren't close. I asked, "What did she sound like?" My girlfriend said it was a soft, sweet voice with no accent. My mom's Dutch was broken, thick with a Russian accent. It couldn't have been her. My phone was locked for privacy, and it was on silent. No ring, no vibration. I asked my mom about it, and she shot me an angry look, saying, "I didn't talk to anyone." "You're crazy." I was reeling, trying to make sense of it. Weeks later, one of my friends got a call during class. His mom was sick, and he was waiting to hear when he could pick her up from the hospital. He missed a call that went to voicemail. When he played it, all we heard was a woman screaming like she was being tortured, mixed with heavy static. It was chilling. We tried to take it to the police, but the voicemail vanished from his phone. I called bullshit on it, but my friend was terrified and swore he didn't delete it. He wasn't the type to prank me like that. After all these calls, my friends and I stopped answering our phones. That's when I started to wonder if this was paranormal. One winter night, my friend Jeffrey was over. I hadn't told him about any of this. He was an old friend, and I didn't want to scare him off. We were playing video games, having a good time. I had the heat cranked to 25 degrees Celsius because I hate the cold. After a bit, Jeffrey went to the bathroom, and I stayed in my room, messing with some new software, laughing as I edited a photo of a classmate. Then I heard a scream, loud, raw, coming from downstairs. It was Jeffrey. I bolted to the bathroom, where he'd locked himself in, crying. "Why did you do that?" he kept saying. I was clueless. He said someone outside the door was whispering his name over and over, and he thought it was me. I told him I'd been upstairs the whole time. He didn't believe me at first, but he opened the door, and we ran back to my room. The heat was gone. It felt like minus 10 degrees Celsius. We barricaded ourselves in until morning. Jeffrey left, vowing never to stay over again. That weekend, my mom was away, so I stayed at school as late as I could. When I got home one Monday, I locked the front door and took the key with me, like always, scared of intruders. As I walked into the living room, I heard footsteps going up the stairs. The previous owner had told us his brother hanged himself in the attic, and he'd heard him walking around, talking to himself after he died. I'd brushed it off as a skeptic, but those footsteps brought it all back. I told myself it was the neighbors and kept moving. Then I heard them again, frantic, running up the stairs I'd just come from. I yelled, "Mom, is that you?" "Who's there?" No answer. I got cocky, thinking if it was an intruder, I'd catch them. I went upstairs, calling out, "Mom, this isn't funny." Every door was open, stuff scattered everywhere. I checked under my mom's bed, and then I heard those panicked footsteps again, racing to the attic. I followed, heart pounding, but the attic was empty. I froze, realizing this wasn't my imagination. Then I felt two hands shove me hard down the stairs. I didn't look back, just ran outside and sat there, confused, until night. I went back inside, desperate for a hot shower after sitting in the cold. Our bathroom had a big mirror my mom kept spotless. I cleaned it that week, like always. After my shower, I got dressed and opened the door, then screamed. There was a handprint on the mirror, small, not mine, like someone had leaned on it while I was showering. The door was locked from the inside. I couldn't stay. I grabbed my stuff and crashed at a friend's place until my mom got back. A few days later, I came home from school to find my mom packing in a frenzy, smashing things as she went. I asked if she was okay, what was going on. She was panicked, saying, "We have to get out of this house. Something evil is here. It's dangerous." I was stunned. She'd always dismissed my stories as imagination. I asked what happened. She told me word for word, "Last night I heard footsteps coming from downstairs to my door. They stopped, and there was a knock. I thought it was you, so I said, 'Come in.' No answer. The knocking started again. I said, 'Come in,' again, nothing. I opened the door, and the hallway was empty. This morning, while I was doing laundry, the big closet came off the wall and nearly crushed me. I stopped it just in time. She was bleeding. A lamp in the closet had fallen and hit her face. I was floored. My friend and I had secured that closet with 8 screws. It wasn't going anywhere, not even in an earthquake. Seeing her like that, I knew she wasn't lying. We packed up and left. The whole thing was so terrifying, I didn't know what to think. We moved, changed our numbers, even had a priest bless the new place. Nothing helped much. The calls stopped after I left my mom's, but I still find things misplaced or broken sometimes. Every now and then, I hear disembodied voices, no matter where I live. I've thought about it a lot. Was it a stalker, some unseen force, or just my mom messing with me? I'll never know. I'm married now, happy, trying to leave that part of my life behind. If you've been through anything like this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I could use some answers. Call me a liar if you want. I wouldn't believe this either if it hadn't happened to me. Those memories still haunt me, and I just hope whatever was behind it stays gone for good. This happened about 6 months ago, and even though it didn't happen to me directly, it still gives me the creeps whenever I think about it. It was a Friday night, and I was at a friend's sleepover for his birthday party. There were 7 of us in total, and the night kicked off with us messing around, playing video games like FIFA and Call of Duty. After a while, though, we got bored and started brainstorming something else to do. Someone suggested ding-dong ditching, and we all thought it'd be hilarious. For anyone who doesn't know, ding-dong ditching is when you knock on someone's door or ring their doorbell and then sprint away before they answer. So we grabbed our coats and headed out into the night. We must have hit 10 to 20 houses, laughing and running through the neighborhood. It was all fun and games until we wandered into a sketchier part of town. The streets there looked deserted, almost abandoned, and the vibe was just off. It gave me chills, honestly. But one of my friends, Josh, the boldest of the group, said he wanted to keep going and ding-dong ditch down that creepy street. The rest of us were hesitant, but we followed along. I didn't want to look like a coward in front of everyone, so I tagged along too, even though my gut was telling me to bail. We walked deeper into the neighborhood until we reached the end of the street, where there was this small, run-down house. It looked empty, like no one had lived there in years. Josh, being Josh, declared he was going to knock on that house. The rest of us weren't feeling it. The place looked way too eerie. We told him we were heading back to Harrison's house, our friend who was hosting the sleepover, and that he should catch up with us after he was done. So we started walking back. After 2 or 3 minutes, we realized Josh still hadn't shown up. Ding-dong ditching takes, 20 or 30 seconds. He should have been back by now. Something felt wrong. We waited a bit longer, but the longer we stood there, the more uneasy we got. Panic started to set in. We knew something wasn't right. So we decided to head back to the house to look for him. When we got there, the place was dead silent. No sign of Josh, no one outside, nothing. One of my friends suggested we knock on the door to see if anyone was inside. We did, but no one answered. We knocked again, still nothing. Then, on the 3rd knock, I swear I saw something that froze my blood. A pair of eyes staring right at me through the window. I shouted to my friends, and we bolted down the path away from that house as fast as we could. Once we were a safe distance away, we huddled together and talked it over. Those eyes in the window, that wasn't normal. Something was seriously wrong with that place. We decided to call the police. They showed up at Harrison's house about 10 minutes later, and we told them everything, what we'd been doing, what we saw, the whole deal. They asked us to show them the house, then told us to head back home and wait while they checked it out. We did as they said, nervous out of our minds. 2 hours later, an officer came back to Harrison's house, and what he told us scared the absolute hell out of me. He said they went into the house and found a grimy-looking guy, probably in his late 40s. Then they found Josh, tied up on a bed, stripped down to his underwear. The officer got Josh out of there and took him to the police station. But that's not even the worst part. About a month later, Josh finally opened up and told us what happened. He said he knocked on the door, ran, and then slowed down to a walk, thinking he was in the clear. What he didn't realize was that the sick bastard in the house had followed him. The guy grabbed Josh, covered his mouth so he couldn't scream, and dragged him back inside. He tied Josh up, took off his clothes, and left him on the bed. Josh said he was lying there, terrified, for what felt like 20 minutes when he heard us knocking on the door. That's when the guy left the room, probably to check who was outside. Not long after, the police showed up, busted in, and got Josh out of there. They arrested the man, and we haven't heard anything from the cops since. After that night, we swore off ding-dong, ditching for good. None of us ever want to go through something like that again. Knowing what happened to Josh, I'm convinced that kind of thing could happen to anyone, even you. I'm a 21-year-old woman now, but something happened to trailing me when I was 14 that stuck with me ever since. Back then, I lived in a small town called Sonora, nestled in the Sierra Nevada mountains. I was a pretty well-raised kid, but things at home weren't always easy. My parents fought a lot, and my dad, while he'd do anything for me and my older sister, could be harsh. That weekend, my sister was staying at my grandmother's, and my parents' arguments were worse than usual. I was feeling down all day, just moping around, until my friend Gina called. She invited me over for a slumber party at her house, which was only a short walk down the street. It sounded like the perfect escape, so I said yes, packed a bag, told my parents I'd be at Gina's, and headed out. When I got to her place, we hung out in her room, laughing, sketching designs for tattoos she'd dream of getting one day, and watching movies, Tremors of all things. It was fun, just what I needed. Then, out of nowhere, Gina got up, left the room, and called me over to meet someone. She introduced me to a guy I'd never seen before, her cousin, Blake. He was tan, well-built, and had this almost charming vibe about him. Being a naive 14-year-old, I was instantly smitten. We all went back to her room to hang out, and I stepped into the bathroom to change into my pajamas. When I came back, I froze. The smell of weed hit me like a wall. I opened the door and saw them passing a small pipe back and forth, taking hits. I'd never been around that stuff before, and knowing it was illegal made me uneasy, but I sat down anyway. They kept passing the pipe around, and then it came to me. I shook my head, not wanting any part of it, but Blake gave me this look and said, "What, you scared?" My hands were shaking, but I took the pipe. The taste was awful, and I started coughing hard. I handed it back and sat there, still coughing, hoping that was the end of it. But the pipe came back around, and when I said I didn't want more, Blake rolled his eyes, took a hit, and then, out of nowhere, pushed me against the wall and blew the smoke right into my mouth. I was disgusted and shoved him away. Big mistake. About 30 minutes later, they were both high, and I could tell something had shifted in Blake. He wasn't charming anymore. He sat next to me, touched my face, and gave me this creepy smile that felt hungry. I asked him to stop, my voice trembling, but that's when things got bad. He slapped me hard and snapped, "Why you being such a bitch?" Before I could process it, he said, "I know you want this," and started hitting me again. He slapped my face, my leg, my back, then the back of my head. I was dizzy, crying, and completely overwhelmed. Gina was too out of it to notice what was happening. Then he forced me to drink wine, trying to get me drunk. I took small sips, just to avoid making him angrier, while he chugged half the bottle. Next thing I knew, he grabbed my wrist, slammed me onto the bed, and hovered over me. I was terrified, but I thought fast. I told him I felt sick and might puke on him, begging for a few minutes to pull myself together. He was drunk and high enough to buy it. He mumbled something, lay down next to me, and wrapped his arms around me in this suffocating bear hug. I could feel something pressing against my thigh, and it took everything in me not to scream. I held my breath, waiting, praying he'd pass out. After what felt like forever, he started snoring loudly. I carefully wiggled out of his grip, inch by inch, and curled up on the floor in the corner of the room, pressed against the wall. I stayed there for hours, too scared to move, until the sun started to rise. As soon as it was barely light outside, I bolted. I ran home as fast as I could. I had a bad experience with the police before, so I was too scared to walk home in the dark, worried I'd get in trouble, especially since I probably reeked of weed. When I got home, I jumped in the shower, washed my clothes, and tried to scrub the night off me. I wanted to tell someone. My parents, the police, anyone, but I couldn't. I was terrified of my dad's reaction, convinced I'd get in trouble for being around drugs or for what happened. So I kept it locked inside for years. It wasn't until I was older that I learned the truth about Blake. He was 19 at the time, a drug addict with a history of attacking and assaulting girls much younger than me. I got lucky that night, luckier than I realized at the time. Even now, I can't sleep over at someone's house without feeling sick to my stomach. I don't know what happened to Blake, and I hope I never cross paths with him again. I'm a 16-year-old girl, and like most teenagers, I love having sleepovers with my friends on the weekends. I do online school while my best friend, Dylan, goes to public school, so we really cherish the time we get to spend together. Dylan's parents are divorced, and she usually stays with her mom, which is where I typically sleep over. Her mom's house is in a middle-class neighborhood south of where I live, and I'm used to the area, so I've never felt uneasy there. But this time was different. Dylan was staying at her dad's place, which is up on the hill in the fancier part of town. When she invited me to sleep over there, I was a little surprised since I'd never been to her dad's house before. I barely knew her dad or her stepmom, and I'd never even met her 2-year-old brother. Still, I didn't feel nervous or anything, it was just new. My mom drove me over, and on the way, she jokingly acted disappointed because my brother and sister weren't home, and she'd been looking forward to hanging out with me, her only nice kid. We both knew she was kidding, so we laughed and had a silly, dramatic goodbye as she dropped me off. I waved as she drove away and headed to the front door. Inside, everything seemed fine. I said hi to Dylan's dad, her stepmom, and her little brother, who was adorable. It was all pretty normal. Dylan, and just to clarify, she's a girl since Dylan's often a boy's name, had this creepy robotic baby for a school project. You know, those fake babies they give you to teach you about parenting. I wasn't thrilled about spending the night with what felt like a plastic demon, but whatever. The night started out like any other sleepover. We stayed up late, acting like typical dumb teenagers, scrolling on our phones, listening to music, and ignoring the world. The fake baby would cry every now and then, but it wasn't hard to make it stop, so we mostly forgot about it. Terrible fake parents, I know. Eventually, we decided to call it a night, but not before I made us check the locks on the basement door 1,000,000 times. I'm kind of a paranoid person, and the fact that there was a door leading outside so close to Dylan's room freaked me out. I kept telling myself I was being silly. This was the most boring Mormon town in Utah, where literally nothing ever happens. I mean, sure, we're near the capital, but we were deep in the suburbs. What could go wrong? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. We climbed into bed, and Dylan handed me the wristband for the robotic baby. It was loose enough for her to slip off, so she gave it to me with a grin and said, "Have fun." I just laughed and tried to settle down. Dylan falls asleep in seconds, but I'm a light sleeper, and it takes me forever to even feel tired. I lay there, staring around the room, half expecting that stupid baby to start wailing. Finally, I drifted into a light sleep, but around 2 a.m., the baby started crying. It scared the life out of me, but I got up, grabbed the fake bottle, and fed it for about 20 minutes until it quieted down. The whole time, I was hyper-aware of every little noise in the house, my paranoia kicking into overdrive. I went back to bed, trying to relax. Then, at 3:30 a.m., the baby started screaming again. I was annoyed but dragged myself up, changed its diaper, and crawled back into bed. Finally, at 4:44 a.m., I'm not kidding, that's the exact time, and I always seem to wake up at that number for some weird reason, the baby went off again. I bolted upright, ready to deal with it, but what I saw stopped me cold. There was a man in the room, and he just dropped the fake baby. He was stumbling around, trying to navigate Dylan's messy room. That stupid robot had a sensitive neck like a real baby, and if you didn't support it, it'd start screaming, which it was doing now. I was frozen, my mouth hanging open, unable to move or think. I was about to scream when Dylan beat me to it. Suddenly, the room was pure chaos. The baby shrieking, Dylan screaming, me screaming, and this guy fumbling to open the jammed door. We heard heavy footsteps upstairs, Dylan's dad, no doubt, and the man finally got the door open. He bolted down the hallway toward the main room, where the basement door had been pried open. I was shaking, but somehow managed to grab the baby and use the wristband to shut it up. Dylan's dad came tearing downstairs, but he just missed the guy, but hopped the fence right as her dad ran outside. We were all beyond freaked out. We called the police immediately, and they came to take our statements. They got interrupted by some urgent call and had to leave, but Dylan and I refused to stay in the basement. We grabbed blankets and camped out in the living room on the first floor. Her dad, trying to lighten the mood, let us take a kitchen knife for protection. He thought it was kind of funny. We didn't. We were jumping at every sound, clutching that knife like our lives depended on it. Around 5 a.m., an officer came back to check on us and give us an update. They'd caught the guy. Turns out he'd broken into another house a few doors down and tried to steal a real baby. I have no idea why he wanted a baby or what he planned to do with one, and I don't want to know. All I know is that the sick bastard is behind bars, and no babies, real or fake, were hurt. That night messed me up, and to make it worse, I found out later that while I was at Dylan's, my mom had a seizure at home. She was alone, and I felt awful for not being there to help her. At the same time, I can't stop thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't been at Dylan's that night. Both situations were awful, and I never want to go through anything like that again. When I was 4 years old, my parents and I lived in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood where nothing much ever happened beyond the occasional birthday party or block gathering. Our area was set up in a unique way. 4 rows of houses formed a square, with all the front doors facing inward toward a central courtyard. Each corner of the square had a small opening that led to the houses. Since my parents were always busy with work, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with them. Most days, my grandmother looked after me, and I'd play in a little playground in the middle of the square while she cooked, cleaned, or relaxed in our yard. One day, while I was at the playground, a boy named Nathan walked up to me and started talking. Being so young, neither of us had any sense of shyness, so we hit it off right away. We played together for hours, just doing what kids do, running around, making up games, having fun. When my grandmother called me in for dinner, I said goodbye to Nathan and ran home. Later that same night, around 8 or 9 p.m., which is pretty late for a 4-year-old, the doorbell rang. My mom answered, but no one was there. We brushed it off, figuring it was just some prankster, and went back to bed. The next day, I headed to the playground as usual and ran into Nathan again. I was thrilled because I didn't have many friends, and the ones I did have lived far away. We picked up right where we left off, playing and laughing like the day before. As evening rolled around, I asked Nathan if he wanted to come over to my house to keep playing. He agreed without a second thought, which I found a little odd since I always had to ask my parents' permission before going to someone's house. But I didn't question it. Having a friend to play with was too exciting. We spent hours at my place, messing around and having a blast. Before he left, I asked if he wanted to stay over for a sleepover. Again, he said yes immediately. I checked with my parents, who gave me a strange look but agreed to let Nathan stay the night. That evening, I noticed something unusual. We'd already had dinner, but Nathan hadn't eaten anything all day. No lunch, no snacks. When I asked if he wanted something to eat, he politely said he wasn't hungry. I found that hard to believe, but I didn't push it. We stayed up late, being silly kids, playing and enjoying ourselves. That first sleepover turned into a routine. For about a year, Nathan and I were inseparable. We'd play at the playground or my house, and he'd often stay over. But every time I asked my parents if he could spend the night, they'd give me that same weird look. I didn't understand why. There were other odd things about Nathan, too. Sometimes, during our sleepovers, he'd have nightmares. I'd wake up to him screaming, mumbling, thrashing around, or just lying there, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight would light up his face, and it creeped me out. It got so unsettling that whenever it happened, I'd tiptoe to my parents' room and sleep in their bed. Nathan never seemed to mind, and I never brought it up with him because I thought it might be rude to ask about his nightmares. Then, one night, everything changed. For once, it was just my family at home. No Nathan, no relatives, no one else. I went to bed as usual, but was jolted awake when my dad scooped me up and carried me out of the house. I was half asleep and terrified, not understanding what was happening. But there was no reason to be scared. He was rushing me to my grandmother's house because my mom was about to give birth to my little sister. As he carried me to the car, my head rested on his shoulder, and I could see behind us. That's when I noticed something strange, a figure sitting on the staircase in our house. I think it was Nathan. His face looked blank and motionless, like he wasn't really there. It spooked me, but I was so tired and confused that I didn't dwell on it. After that night, I barely saw Nathan. We stopped playing together, and our friendship just faded. Every once in a while, I'd catch a glimpse of him standing in one of the corners of the square, staring at me from a distance. It gave me chills, but I tried to ignore it. A few months after my sister was born, we moved to a bigger house because our family had grown. I never saw Nathan again after that. In fact, no one did. What's strange is that I never went to Nathan's house during that whole year we were friends. Looking back, that feels odd, but as a 4-year-old, I didn't think twice about it. Recently, I decided to ask my parents if they remembered Nathan from our old neighborhood. I was curious to know what they thought of him. To my surprise, they both laughed and said I had quite the imagination. They told me Nathan was just my imaginary friend. But that can't be right. Nathan wasn't imaginary. I could touch him, play with him, even wrestle with him like kids do. We did real things together. Yet, according to my parents, they never saw him, not once, the entire time we were friends. Every time I think about it, it sends shivers down my spine.